There's a story about a Buddhist monk that was a head of a place in Canada, and he came here to a program, and there was a Wall Street Journal article written about him and his experience. And he said, the story goes, you Americans, you figure out the shortcut to everything. And then he loaded up with, at the time, with tapes to take back to the monastery. So we figured out a shortcut that you don't have to do years of sitting. And he was in Gateway, and he said, within the first 2 days, y'all are doing what we took 25 years to do.
Allyn Evans is the CEO of the Monroe Institute, a consciousness research facility that's been quietly revolutionizing human potential for over 50 years. Today, we explore how ordinary people are unlocking higher consciousness experiences at remarkable rates once thought impossible.
So Bob was really good at creating it, exploring it, having others explore it to create this map of consciousness for us to be able to learn how to navigate. So just regular, ordinary folks can gain these superpowers by experience. They experience it themselves and they learn how to do it.
Out-of-body experiences, remote viewing, communicating with higher dimensions. The Monroe Institute seems to have cracked the code on making consciousness expansion accessible.
People will say Hogwarts when you come here. For me and participants, everyone that I talk to, and the trainers, it's more exploratory and fun. It's not a discipline. That's the big difference. It's not about sitting there and quieting your mind. It's about engaging with what's unfolding as you have these experiences.
Allyn shares how their breakthrough technology guides your brain into extraordinary states that reveal our greater human potential.
So primarily sound and using the frequencies is our program base. You use it when you're sleeping at night. And that's body asleep, mind awake. And that's a really good foundational level to learn because that's what helps you be able to remain alert in these deep meditative states so that you can remember what's happening. All these things happen to us all the time. You can have your body asleep, snoring, and your mind is awake.
Before we get into this conversation, I want to ask you to join this amazing community of consciousness explorers. This whole idea of pursuing expanded consciousness and the boundaries of human potential while living a modern life is relatively new, which is why we interview revered masters, teachers, experts, and practitioners to help you on your own journey. To stay up to date on the latest conversations, simply click subscribe below and you'll be notified each time a new episode comes out. I am so grateful for all of your support and comments. I love reading them. Now let's dive into this conversation. Hey, Allyn, it's wonderful to see you.
Hi, glad to be here.
Well, the Monroe Institute, as we were discussing, has been hovering around my field for years now. So I'm really thrilled to have this conversation. I look at the Monroe Institute as really a pioneer of kind of bringing these consciousness inner technologies to the world and exposing what's possible for humans that are outside of the consensus narrative. And maybe to just frame this up, what is the Monroe Institute for people that are less familiar with your work?
Yeah, so it was started by Bob Monroe, and he is someone that, with the team, created the use of the binaural beat technology. So I think that's, most people know what that is now. You know, it's listening to frequencies that have some type of brain entrapment for the brain to follow and take you down to these deep meditative states and different brainwave patterns. So that's what we do here. We have programs. If you come to campus, we have a real campus. If you come to campus, we have we'll support you with what we call exercises, but basically meditations using the sound technology. And then each program will have a purpose. So Bob was really good at creating it, exploring it, having others explore it to create this map of consciousness for us to be able to learn how to navigate. So just regular, ordinary folks can gain these superpowers by experience. You know, they experience it themselves and they learn how to do it.
And I think, a lot of people listening, maybe they've been to a meditation retreat. So the idea of like going somewhere for 7 days or something and having an experience is not a new idea, but Monroe Institute kind of has a little bit different flavor of that.
Yes, it does. People will say Hogwarts, like when you come here. So it's not, what I love about this, and I might be some people in the mindfulness or the transcendental areas of meditation might not like what I think about this or what I say about it. But for me and participants, everyone that I talk to, and the trainers, it's more exploratory and fun. It's not a discipline. That's the big difference. It's not about sitting there and quieting your mind. It's about engaging with what's unfolding as you have these experiences. So it's a totally different way to do it. So it's not, because I think about, like if you go to a silent retreat or you go somewhere where you're having to, sit in a disciplined meditative state, with your legs crossed on the floor for many hours. To me, that's work and painful. And this doesn't have to be that way, and it's not.
Right. Yeah. I like the Hogwarts reference. It makes me think of there's a lot of mystery schools and different things like that. And the idea that you could just get exposure to not only practices, but technology that enhances those practices
Right, right.
and ultimately driving towards a direct experience, which ties into the mission of the Monroe Institute that I'd love to hear you share more about.
So, what we're doing right now, we've got since I came on in 2021, we got super focused on reaching our goal. The goal has been set several years before I started, but we weren't measuring it. And the goal was let's go after 1% of the population to have a direct experience, which is approximately 80 people, so that we can help this shift of humanity, help
80 million people,
million.
right?
Yeah.
80 people. I mean, you guys probably knocked that
Or
off in a weekend.
did I say 80,000,000? And we have reached the 1,000,000. We've surpassed the 1,000,000 mark. We're behind our schedule, but we look at it every quarter, and we're making collaborations and doing things that are keeping us moving in a forward direction. And I truly believe by 2032 we'll have met that mark. And so, why do we want to do that? Well, you've heard of the mariachi, yeah, and I'm going to talk about that. So, the mariachi effect, which is 1%. So that the idea is if 1% of the population, let's say in a city or in a state, are meditating and practicing, then crime rates go down. It impacts the environment. So it's kind of the same thing. That 1% of getting more people more evolved with experience, transforming, evolving, then we can have a similar effect. And it's like the mystical uh, monkey, where they would put sweet potatoes in the sand on this island, and the monkeys would pick them up and eat them. Then one day, a female monkey decided, I'm going to go in the ocean and wash it, and she ate it. And so it supposedly was cleaner, not gritty with sand, tasted better. And then she started teaching other monkeys. And so the way this goes is that at some point it became so pervasive in their consciousness that it went on to other islands where there would not have been communication of monkeys doing it. So that's the myth about it. If we're doing it, if we're going for 1% and other organizations are going for 1% who have similar missions, just think of the impact that we can have.
I really love that. And I love the emphasis on direct experience because I've had a lot of mystical experiences, and you try to share this with friends and you try to talk about these things, and they're just not going to get it unless they have some type of their own experience,
Right.
right? You're always kind of fighting an uphill battle. And so I think, the emphasis on direct experiences is really exciting.
Yeah.
And I also, the morphogenic fields, I believe it's called morphic resonance. Rupert Sheldrake pioneered the
Yeah.
concept where, as people change, like so many, I just love the idea of that. Like so many, I had an interesting conversation with Dean Radin, who wrote the book Magic is Real. He's head of Noetic Sciences. And we were talking about how a lot of these things that you read about with the levitating saints and all these amazing, Taoist masters doing all these wonderful things, like the human consciousness at that period of time allowed for that because there was an openness to it. There was like
Mhm.
enough people that had experienced or seen these things that it actually opened the gate for humans to have that capacity.
Mhm.
And I think, not only is it what I'm excited about what you're doing, it's not only making these things more accessible and easier to obtain for the entirety of the humanity, but also potentially opening up new things
Mhm.
that we don't know about that have been kind of closed off based on the predominant consciousness that is on the planet right now.
No, agreed. And so that's our mission. That's what we're doing. And we just know through experience that the sound technology is a bridge to help support people to reach those places themselves. Bob Monroe, when he talked about his own experiences, but when people would ask him questions or talk about things, he would say, "Tell me what your experience is," or "You go have the experience. Like you come tell me what happened." So that's what we want. We want you to have the experience.
I love that. Now, I know there's kind of a broader map that you guys have of these kind of altered states of consciousness.
Yep.
I want to hear more about that. And is the sound component, the HemiSync technology, is that pervasive across all of the practices? Or is it just kind of like there's certain things you do with sound, there's certain things you don't do with sound?
So primarily sound is and using the frequencies is our program base. So if you're going to come to a program here, I think there's only one right now that we have that does not have the support, but you use it when you're sleeping at night. But what you were asking about were the focus levels that Bob created. And when he worked with the explorers, there were about 1,000 people he worked with as volunteers in the early days, and they would have experiences. And so then it helped him map out kind of what these territories were based on the frequency combinations. So we have what we introduce you to first is called Focus 10, and that's body asleep, mind awake. And that's a really good foundational level to learn because that's what helps you be able to remain alert in these deep meditative states so that you can remember what's happening. All these things happen to us all the time. We just don't recall them because we're not consciously experiencing them. So that's why Focus 10 is so great. And you literally can have your body asleep, snoring, and your mind is awake. And I have an aura ring that looks at sleep cycles and things like that. And if I'm in Focus 10, it thinks I'm asleep. So,
There you go. You got the data for you right there.
yeah. And what I do if I'm having like a sleepless night, I can go to Focus 10 and I just know, well, my body's resting. So this is good. My brain might not be, but my body is resting.
Part of my curiosity is, so you have all these different frequencies that allow people to get into these different experiences. What would if somebody asks, like, what's the purpose of that? You know, why do I care about my body being asleep and my mind being awake? What can I do that I can't usually do when I have access to that?
Right. Well, so Focus 10, again, I think it's a foundational piece. And so that's just you training yourself to be in a very deep meditative state and stay alert. Then Focus 12, another one that we have here on campus, and it's in our flagship program, Gateway, that we teach you 5 of them to begin with. And Focus 12 is more about expanded awareness. So we're stepping out of the physical body and we're tapping into more of that total self or higher self communication, maybe even getting to the guidance in that level too. In remote viewing, it's very helpful to be in a 10 or 12 state as you prepare for the remote viewing exercise because you're tapping into a different level of awareness. And then Focus 15 is another one that we train, and it is about, we call it the void, but it's no time. So basically, it's where experiences of past life regression, parallel lives, future lives can unfold for you. We did an exercise this week with staff on Focus 15, and I was retrieving aspects of myself that I had left behind in childhood. Purposely, I made that intention. And so that's a fun one to do.
That's my kind of work meeting right there.
I know we were testing some new stuff, so we all got to have a little break during the day. And then, although it's not in Gateway, there's actually 4 we teach you in Gateway, but Focus 18 is heart centered, so that's where you're dealing with heart energy. Then the 4th one for Gateway is Focus 21, and that is where we call it Beyond the Bridge. So that's where you are tapping into more of that accessing guidance, deceased loved ones. If you're here on campus and you're having a program together, you might even run into your classmates during the meditation and have shared experiences. So it's, yeah.
Wow. And is the idea, people take these different sound technologies and they can go home and continue to use them and
Yes.
kind of deepen their practice.
Yes, definitely. And I've been a trainer for many years, and what I witness is transformation. I mean, I've had stories like one story that I've written about before is a participant who had a mother that she was taking care of, an elderly mother. It's very difficult for her to take care of her. So she comes to Gateway and she goes, "I expect a miracle with this relationship this week." And I was like, "Oh dear," because when
Here we go.
somebody has like exactly what they want to happen, it can set you up for disappointment. Well, right off the bat, she had an experience where she got to go and be an observer of her mother when her mother was in her 20s and in her early 30s. And she saw how she was beaten down by life and that she was continually frustrated by life experiences. Then, another meditation, not too long after that, she got to see her grandmother, the maternal grandmother, also, and to see what influenced them to be the people they became. So it gave her this gift of understanding. And, she said, "Oh, it's still going to be hard, but I can look at it differently and I can understand it differently." So, those are the those are the reasons to do this from my perspective. It gives you a broader understanding, a higher perspective than you have with your five senses.
I think one of the things that are attractive about what I know about Monroe is a lot of people take, a number of paths to get these type of access to this type of information and experiences.
Yeah.
One, they go and they meditate for however many years on end, hoping to kind of get there, or they take psychedelics, which is a dice roll, right? You just don't know what you're going to get. It could be great. It could be really painful and tough. And I think Monroe is providing an alternative that's different from both of those.
Right, we say psychedelics without the psychedelics is what we are. But the thing about it, so with psychedelic experience, usually can feel very frantic. Of course, it's out of control. It's can be, depending on what it is, like DMT would be a very short experience. With Monroe Sound Science or HemiSync, and I'll explain more about that in a little bit. You can have extended stays in these places, as long as the technology is supporting you there, and you can even stop the technology. We train you not to use the technology so
That
that
was
you
going to be a
go,
question that I ask.
like that's what I do at night when I can't go to sleep and I'm in Focus 10. I go there without the technology. But I like the technology so much that I'll usually use it, even though I know I can do it without it. But this way, it's a controlled, it's safe. There's no adverse or jolting, and you're in control. Like you can stop it at any moment. That you're ready to check out and say, "Okay, I need to process this before I do something else."
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I definitely have had psychedelic experiences where I'm like, I want this to end. I can't press eject. This sucks. So really very much acknowledge that benefit. And yeah, I think that I want to dive a little bit more deeply into kind of the moving away from not needing technologies. Personally, my belief is like, hey, we should embrace all the tools that are available to us. Like, why not?
Yeah.
Although I could see, I've studied in some very traditional lineages where they look at that and it's like, oh, well, that's cheating. That's a bad thing. You don't want to be reliant upon anything about outside of yourself. And yeah, how does the progression typically go if someone starts with the audio and says, hey, you know what? I actually want to be able to do some of these things without needing to plug my earphones in or whatever it is.
Right. We actually start with Gateway, that flagship program. You even have an exercise where you're not using it and you're using the tools that you have learned during the week to help you get there. And we call it a preparatory process that you go through. So it directs the mind with your intention to help you get there.
Nice. Yeah. I imagine for a lot of people, it's even just having that direct experience of the possibility changes the beliefs that allow them to just start to be able to, the artificial walls have come down, if you will, through the direct experience.
But most of us still will use a technology if it's convenient, if it's there. Like if I can
Yeah.
pick up my phone and get the Expand app, I'm going to do that.
Why not? So you mentioned HemiSync and Monroe Sound Science.
Mhm.
Tell me more about those two how those two things are different.
Okay. So HemiSync, I want to start with HemiSync, was created, of course, by Bob Monroe and team in the 1970s. That's based on binaural beats. So that's a modulation. With Monroe Sound Science, of course, if Bob were still here, he would still be evolving. And just think about this great equipment we have now compared to what he did. And that's where I know he was a genius, because the equipment he had to use, the measuring equipment that he had to use, we are so far ahead of it now that what he produced is amazing to me. But now we do have new tools. Technologies that has advanced, so we have a better understanding. So instead of using one modulation, binaural beats, we use several modulations, and we'll combine them. It depends on the purpose. Sometimes we might just use one modulation. Sometimes we might use five. We also now are doing something that we don't believe anyone else is doing, and that's 3D experience with sound.
Oh, like 3D sound.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we're going to continue to evolve. Like binaural beats right now, anybody that has any kind of tech skill can figure that one out. That's something that people can develop on their own. And that's why you see it popping up everywhere. I still would say, hey, we're the ones that have been doing it for 50 years. We're the ones that have the special recipes. So that would be the direction I would suggest people go in. But with Monroe Sound Science, it's evolution.
I would also say too, right? It's, as you guys know, it's not just about the audio, right? It's about how to direct the mind and intention to actually use the supportive environment.
Right. And that's true. So even in the programs that we do, we're teaching you other tools. The technology is a support tool. And then if you learn and you want to do it and you pay attention and learn how to not use it, again, that's a tool you can take away and still have these peak experiences. And now we're getting into biofeedback training with it's a headband called Euphoria, and we're doing a research project right now where we're working with the developer to be able to tell us when we're in focus 10, when we're in focus 12, when we're in focus 15. So this is brand new for us. The way we've been doing it in the past is by the way it feels to us or the way we perceive the experience. And then it's described so similarly by people that's how we have known that we're in it. Now we're going to have actually a device that'll help us know when we're in it.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was going to ask about. Is I know there's been a lot of scientific measurement of these mystical experiences at Monroe, and I'm curious if there's any standout learnings or observations from all the years doing that.
So the main thing that we've done is worked with the mind mirror. Are you familiar with that?
I've heard of it, but I'm not super familiar with it.
So it's an EEG system, and it was created by Maxwell Cade. Ironically, about the same time Bob was over here doing his thing, this guy was over here creating that. And his theory was, or his hypothesis was, if I can bring in renowned healers, renowned mediums, yogis, disciplined meditators, I map their brain, then with biofeedback, I can teach the regular human how to access those states. So then the brain patterns over the years were created. One's awakened mind, one's evolved mind, and then there's superconscious mind. And then this EEG data is then showing when you get into those states, how long you're holding those states. So we use the sound technology, Monroe Sound Science, with this EEG system. And we've been doing it since 2017. So we've got lots of data, real-time validation that things are happening. One thing that was interesting that we discovered is when people have out-of-body experiences, the whole thing collapses. So your brain waves just collapse. So that's interesting.
Really? So like there's just like nothing going on?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. What do you make of that?
They're gone.
Well, it makes me just think about consciousness is not limited to the physical
Exactly.
body
You're
and
more than your
structures,
physical body.
right?
Yeah, you're more than your physical
And
body.
I know that's a big thing that you're trying to advocate people realize
Yeah,
with your
yeah.
experiences.
Yeah, and that's why we say we want you to experience it, because that's what's going to be the paradigm shift for you. Instead of me telling you, "Oh, I had this out of body last night. Let me tell you about it." That's not shifting you. That's just you going, "Oh, that's interesting. Boy, I'd like to do that."
Let's talk about bringing your whole self to work. If you're like many executives, including myself at one point, you might be living a double life. You have your personal career, and then you have your personal growth journey. Conscious Talent is changing that as the world's first executive talent firm specializing in connecting leaders and companies who embrace inner work. Imagine finding job opportunities where your contemplative practice, latest retreat experience, and commitment to your personal evolution are seen as strengths, not secrets. What if you actually felt like your career supported this aspect of your life versus competed with it? Conscious Talent is building a community of leaders and companies who are committed to both combining professional excellence with personal transformation. If you're ready to merge your two worlds with a fully aligned career, join the movement at conscioustalent.com. Here you can sign up for our talent collective to stay on top of future opportunities or find your next transformative team member. How do you think about this balance of exposure and then skill development? Because I imagine there's a continuum, right? Of like, I go to Monroe, I have this cool out of body experience. And then there's probably all of this stuff that I can do with that and all of these places I can go and all of these things. And I've seen the word consciousness training used in your materials. Um, I'm just curious, like if that's a concept, like improving your capacity and skills within each of these different maps and places that Monroe talks about.
hmm So definitely with the graduate programs, we have specific focuses that are focused on different. I keep saying focus levels. So that is definitely a direction you can go, but it's also skill based, like helping you solve problems, make decisions. For me, the biggest push that got me here years and years ago, I'd say over 30 years ago. Well, I got interested over 30 years ago, was my desire to be more psychic, to be my own psychic and not just be so reliant on just the five senses. And I was one of those people that was not gifted that way. I have always been an empath, which means I can sense things that are, if someone's been fighting and I walk into a room and, there's no evidence that my physical eyes they've been fighting, I was able to do that. But that was the extent of my psychic abilities. And so I went on this quest to do that. And that's how I showed up at Monroe eventually. And over the years, just coming to programs, I don't even have the intention. Like I don't have to go, I'm going to pick the psychic development program. You don't even have to do that. It's the side benefit of doing things that interest you through this avenue, whether you come here, whether you take a program, or whether you do it at home with the Expand Out.
Do you find, I know, a lot of people talk about this concept of spiritual gifts where different people have different things that their system is particularly attuned to accessing and experiencing. Does that seem to be in alignment with the experience of people that go through these Monroe programs?
Yes, it does. And here's where I'm not visual. So when I'm having these experiences, I'm not usually seeing. Now, out of body's different, but if I'm doing like a meditation, projected consciousness, I'm not usually seeing, but I'm auditory. So that means I can hear information. I'm kinesthetic, so I can feel it. Like goosebumps or sensations in the body, and then it's also a knowing. So everyone, I call it a hook. Everyone has one or two, three hooks that seem to come on board faster than the other ones. And one of the most frustrating for people is if they're not visual, because if you pay attention to meditation language, the scripts, they're usually telling you to see something. And that can be very frustrating for those of us who aren't seers, uh, on the sixth sense platform.
Yeah, I can totally see that. So one thing I'm interested to get your perspective on is, um, you mentioned that you guys were doing this inside of the company as an exercise. Like for me, these inner states and technologies and information and things that we can do are valuable when they're applied,
Yeah.
right? They're
Right.
valuable when they're integrated into your life to actually enhance it and support and serve the people around you.
Yeah.
What do you think of like the future, right? Where there are a million people that are doing this, or 80 million people that are doing this stuff. Like, how does work look different? How do people's lives look different when this stuff is a little bit more normal?
I want to go back to what you were when you were starting, because we do here at Monroe, we do use it practically as well. One way is for sleep, and that's I've been using it for a very long time, and my sleep scores are usually very rare. Do I have a bad sleep score, even if I have shortened sleep because of using that sound technology support. But also like a staff, we have a weekly staff meeting and we do what we call a patterning exercise. So with the frequencies, putting us in a deep state of meditation, a deep state of awareness, we name our quarterly goals. What are we doing here? How much revenue do we want to make? How many new members of the Dolphin Energy Club, which is a healing club, do we want to have in? How many organic website visitors do we want to have? And so we do that every Tuesday. And then at the end of the quarter, we pull out our numbers and see how we did. And we keep with our revenue goals. We're pretty happy because we keep hitting, like when we set a new one, like we've set a new stretch goal, and so we're not there yet. But it seems to with our collective intention, it seems to really work.
I love that. I just started a new business called Conscious Talent. And the idea is connecting entrepreneurs and executives that are on a consciousness path, because
Yep.
that's quite hard to do today. And one of the things that we do is every single time we have a new search, that we do a kickoff, we do the external kickoff with the client, but we also do an internal kickoff where we basically do a similar type of meditative intention visualization exercise where we see that placement happening, we realize it's already happened,
Yes.
and we kind of connect with the infinite. Um, and it's, yeah, we'll see how it goes, because this is a pretty new business and thing that we're doing, but it feels really good. It
Yeah.
feels really exciting to incorporate that beyond just like, all right, let's go pound the pavement and,
Right.
make some recruitment placements.
Oh, I'm a big believer in intention. Yep. And focus. Intention and focus.
Yeah, they have to go together. Intention without the action and the focus, and kind of needs to be both. So, you've talked about how the 80 million people goal. This is another question that I have. You guys are at 1 million. Like, how do you see this stuff spreading? Because I think there's a lot of people, myself included, who are like, all right, we need to like get the message out there about consciousness and how fundamental it is and the human potentials that are available. I mean, what has been working for you guys, and how do you see this movement growing?
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of collaborations with organizations. So of course that just means you have a bigger reach. So that has been one of our focuses. Of course, our Expand app, which is on Apple or for Android, that's reaching more people, and we are now going to be in 5 languages with it. That's just been added. So we're also making a bigger push internationally. And we've actually got a team together that we're working on international expansion. Um, Also, we're releasing in October a Gateway 2.0, we're calling it, and that's just a self-paced, very inexpensive gateway experience, which is the flagship program. I think it's going to be priced around $500, and then the people, if you get it, it's like you're going to keep the exercises for a lifetime. To be able to use any of those tools. So we're trying to come up with scalable ways to help people have the experience. We're putting some music on YouTube now that has the frequency support. We're going to do longer tracks, like 8 hours, 10 hours, so that people can just play them and have them in the background. So we're just looking for scalable things, and then our research efforts will keep us, making contacts and spreading out a little bit more too.
Nice. So today, you don't have to go to the Monroe Center to have a deep experience. You can
No.
use all these kind of digitally accessible tools.
Right, and that's so people, not everybody can take a week off and come here or pay for it or whatever. Or you might have young children, and so that would make it hard to do. So we're trying to make it more accessible to people, especially people that are live very far away, where it would be a tremendous hardship to come.
Mm. Have you guys I am in my office right now. I have an Opus sound bed. I'm not sure if you're familiar with what that is. It's basically like a sound table, like a vibration table.
Yeah, I don't know that I've been exposed to that brand, but I have been exposed to other brands. Yeah.
Have you guys experimented with that, with the physical vibration accompanying the sound?
Not really. I mean, we've talked to some companies about it and said that's probably in our future, but we have been talking, or we're in collaboration with the Roxivia Light folks that have the light therapy.
Oh yeah, I think I know. Yeah, cool. What else? What other things are kind of on the cutting edge for Monroe, and just where you think this whole field is going?
Yeah, of course, it's moving very quickly, and the more advancements come out with technology and ways for us, because for a long time you couldn't measure gamma waves with the old EEG ways to measure because it didn't have a way to do that, and you couldn't measure the lower beyond or below delta frequencies, brainwave patterns. So we didn't really know they existed at one point. And then it was conjecture that they did, and then now we have the capability to do that. So we just are going to be continue to be responsive. I have a great team of sound engineers and researchers. We're just going to continue to be responsive to help us continue that innovation to support humanity. We're talking to a company now that would add an AV experience with it.
Mm,
And so I think that will be unfolding for us and probably within the next year. So just and
that's
the
awesome.
interesting thing about us, and people tell me this all the time, that we lift way above our weight because we don't have that many employees. We do a lot. And for some people it can look like we move slowly, but to us, we know we're moving very quickly because of what we're doing.
Well, you've been circling around my field for many years, so you're doing something right. You're reaching people for sure.
Yeah.
One of the things I've always wondered, I remember the first exposure for me to sound being able to put you into an altered state of consciousness uh, was a company. Man, I almost forget the name of it. New Calm was the name of it,
Oh, okay.
and I was just like, and that got me excited about learning about Monroe and HemiSync and some of the more mature people. I guess companies that have been at this for a much longer time, and I was just like, how come more people don't know about this?
I know.
Like and this had been probably 8 years into my meditation journey. So I had been somewhat of a practiced meditator, and I had always ran into the issue of trying to get my family to do it, friends to do it, and people just giving up early because there was such a high barrier to entry to actually experiencing
Discipline.
that altered state.
Yeah.
And the sound stuff, I was like, whoa, you can just plug in and get there pretty
Yeah.
quickly, pretty
Yeah.
reliably.
There's a story about a Buddhist monk that was a head of a place in Canada, and he came here to a program. And there was a Wall Street Journal article written about him and his experience. And he said, the story goes, you Americans, you figure out the shortcut to everything. And then he loaded up with, at the time, with tapes to take back to the monastery. So, yeah, we figured out a shortcut that you don't have to do years of sitting. And he said, and he was in Gateway, and he said, within the first 2 days, y'all are doing what we took 25 years to do.
Wow. That's incredible. And so, back to the original question, like this technology clearly works. There's been a lot of people who've gotten tremendous benefit. How come this has not been more in the mainstream?
So when Bob Monroe in the early days, he said they'll find me when they need me. Yeah, that was kind of that. So there was not much focus on marketing. And then over the years, as we've evolved, we still, we probably didn't get an official marketer, somebody that was a marketing person until like I would say 2012, 2013. And then it was, a one person team. So we've only recently gotten into a space where we have a team that is helping that, the social media stuff we're doing now and all of that. We're really getting it out there with a professional team of individuals. Um, Not sure why, because there are other people that do it. I'm not sure why it was contain so much beyond our own story of containment. I don't know.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if there were just like headwinds that the sound as a mind altering experience thing faced. Like, for example, like psychedelics have had a lot of headwinds. There's been people just saying, don't do this, this is bad, this is illegal, etc. And I wasn't sure if there was some type of similar type of antithesis to the mission that you guys were fighting against.
Yeah, I don't think so anymore, but that certainly was there in the early days. But also, what was interesting about our history is that even though we had that, we still had scientists, medical doctors, people that are that more left brain, chemical engineers coming to the Monroe Institute. So we usually have a nice balance of men and women, which is a little bit unusual. And I think it's because of that, the scientific slant that we have.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love that. One one thing I've heard you talk about in another podcast I just thought was an interesting thing to explore is I've heard you say that traditional out of body experiences aren't the only ways that we leave the body.
Right.
And so what are some of the lesser known ways that people experience kind of the consciousness outside of the body?
Yeah. So let's go back to what an OBE is, an out of body experience. Typically, if you're going with a conventional way or traditional way, it's where I realize I've got some energy that's my energetic self that's slipping out of the body, and then it's going up, and then that energetic body can turn around and see the the body sitting there. So there's validation there. But a typical experience or traditional would be um, the a vibration. That's what you'll hear. That they'll have this really heavy vibration or physical vibration that is really not happening, but it's the energetic vibration. They'll hear maybe like a train noise or what they describe like that. Then they get out of their body. There's an attachment. They may or may not look back, and then it's like this sensation of going off. And then there's some people talk about a silver cord that is supposedly keeping you connected. So that doesn't tend to happen as much with individuals. I think it's like 20% of the population that would have that type of or report that type of experience. So then what else is there to do? Well, you can have out of bodies where you don't know that you've gone out of body. You don't consciously know that, but then once it's unfolding and you become aware, you realize what this is. Okay, this is an out of body. Then you can also have lucid dreams, right? So you can be dreaming and go into a lucid dreaming state where you are suddenly in charge. You can, I want to go right. I'll go right. I want to tap that person on the shoulder. I want to change how this ended, how this dream ended. I want to make it a happy ending. So that would be, lucid dreaming. Then you have remote viewing. What's happening there? You're able to project your consciousness to perceive information somewhere else. That's say maybe it's a mile from you, maybe it's 100,000 miles from you. You're able to describe it or pick out what it is. When in meditations, just like say you're here or you're using the Expand app at home, a typical thing, what I call it, is projected consciousness, where you just know, okay, I'm here, I'm in my bed, I'm in my chair, wherever it is I meditate, but I know I'm somewhere else. I'm having another experience.
Yeah, I mean, all of those experiences sound really cool. And, one of the questions on the remote viewing thing, I'd be curious. I remember watching some documentaries on it and talking about how the average person could do this, right? There was like the quote unquote expert remote viewers, but then people off the street were able to do it kind of 80% as good. And so what have you seen with that? I mean, is this something that seemingly everybody can do with some degree of accuracy beyond just randomness?
So with remote viewing, it is accessible to all people. Now, Joe McMonagle, remote viewer 001, who's one of our trainers, he would say it takes a lot of practice to maintain it, to be really good at it, to keep those percentages up, those accuracy percentages up. But in Gateway, that program, the flagship program, that's something we do. We have individuals do it, and people do so successfully. They can, and you get graded. So there's second place, there's first place finish, and so that you might get some of it that's more accurate, and some of it's not. But people tend to be successful with it.
Can you call me intrigued? I definitely want to check that out. Well, I know there's, I feel like we could talk forever. I know you just had some stuff come up. So maybe just to kind of finish it out here, where can people learn more if they're excited about Monroe? I also know you have a new book coming out soon. I feel like this conversation is going to intrigue a lot of people, and just some different entry points for accessing your work and the Institute's work would be a great place to finish here. Well, unfortunately, I believe that the internet cut out for Allyn. So we're going to close the show here. But if you would like to learn more about the Monroe Institute, I would go to the monroeinstitute.org, as well as check out the Get the Expand app from the Monroe Institute. And we'll make sure to link all of those in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.